Hi, my name is Jeff Morgan. This is Sunday, December the 3rd. I just got back from church a little bit ago. One of the questions that I've been asked frequently has been, why are you involved in this fight to see things change in the state of Texas with regard to the family? With regard to this meeting with the Attorney General Ken Paxton on Wednesday, December the 6th, dealing with child support, this is not even an issue that affects me. Last week I was on the radio with somebody and they asked me the same question. You mean you're not affected by this issue? I said, no, the issue does not pertain to me. So why are you doing this? So there's a few reasons. Number one, I look at the whole thing I look at the whole dynamic of the family in a broader context. Child support issue is one thing, but I'm looking at the way that the whole family is affected by society. So the first thing I'll say is there's no personal gain, financial gain for me. I know some people are involved with it and are making their livelihoods off of it, and I respect them for that. I have no financial gain. On the other hand, I've spent a lot of my own money, a lot of my own time. Something like this video camera that I have was purchased for the intent of helping to bring exposure to this issue. I've driven and traveled to Austin, to Washington, D.C., and other places. I've interviewed people in different states, just trying to bring some type of a human perspective to the suffering that is caused to individuals and the destruction of families that takes place at the hands of our government or the government agencies. I've been threatened to be sued probably, I'm guessing, half a dozen times, or by at least half a dozen different individuals. I even had a church in Rockwall, Texas, that said if I came back to the church and I was asking them for help with a problem, and the church told me that if I came back, that I would be subject to being arrested for trespassing. It was a church that I used to attend. It was a church actually that when I was a missionary in Jordan, I came back and presented a need to them. They raised, I believe it was $2,500 for an Iraqi family in Jordan. So they knew who I was, but if I ever stepped back into that church, I could be arrested for trespassing. So I'm not really gaining financially off of this. If anybody has that in the back of their mind, it's actually costing me money and it's costing me time. I could make the case that it's cost me some of my health as well, but I'm looking at this whole issue in a broader context of the family. I do not see how we can have a strong nation or a strong state when we are tearing apart families for no reason whatsoever, indiscriminately, at will, and we are legalizing this. And we are breaking down the relationship between parents and their children and grandparents and their grandchildren. And we sit back with our hands tied and say, we can't do anything about it. And in fact, the very agencies and individuals that say that they can't do anything about it are sometimes the individuals that are responsible for either making or enforcing the laws which cause the weakening and the breakdown and the destruction of the family. As a human being, I have a bit of moral outrage. I'm offended over what I look at as being legalized and state-sponsored bullying of families. When I say legalized and state-sponsored bullying of families, I mean a few things. So for example, this may be an issue that some people will disagree with me about, but I look at no-fault divorce. In about 75% of the instances, studies show that no-fault divorce is really unilateral divorce. It is forced divorce. Often the person who wants to save the marriage is the person who is bullied and victimized at the end and may have child support imposed upon him or her and continues to be bullied by the state to make sure that they pay their fair share for children that they no longer get to see, no longer get to be intimately involved in their lives, and yet they are now responsible to pay, as if by being an ATM machine means they are supporting their children. Being a parent is much more than just providing financial support. The state is denigrating the roles of parents, if that's the way that they look at them, is just being an ATM machine, somebody to make sure that they get money, that they provide money to an ex-spouse for their children. And in many instances, there's no accountability to how that money is spent. The money goes through the Attorney General's office, and by the way, by collecting that money, the Attorney General gets money from the federal government. So they have an incentive to collect child support, and they have an incentive to collect arrearages. One may also think that perhaps the way child support is determined creates arrearages intentionally at times so that the state can collect more money. And as Attorney General Ken Paxton has said on many occasions, Texas is very, very good at collecting child support. The state is #1 in the nation for the last 9 years. Last year, they collected almost $4 billion in child support collection. For every $1 that the office spends on child support collection, they collect $12.27. 4,200 people in the office work for the Attorney General. Out of that 4,200 people, over 2,600 are directly involved in child support enforcement and collection. That's 62%, and these are the Attorney General's numbers, so I will take them at face value. So when you have agencies that bully parents, be it a father or a mother, and extort them for child support collection, often imposed by judges who do so indiscriminately, not in accordance with state guidelines, and the state guidelines need to be revisited. It is a shame when you have an individual who is making $40,000, a single mom, who no longer is the primary caregiver for the children, having to pay an ex-husband who makes $200,000 a year and who was responsible for the divorce by his behavior. She has to pay him child support, and as a result she has to live with her mother. Other people get behind, and the Attorney General's office can punish such people for not keeping up with child support, even though you can make a strong case that really child support is not necessary in those cases. The Attorney General's office has a number of weapons available at its disposal to help people comply with the child support orders, such as they can be denied their driver's license, they can be denied an annual renewal of their vehicle so they have no transportation, or they can be thrown in prison. Anybody should be outraged. But you say, well, it doesn't affect me personally, but it may affect your children and your grandchildren, and it may affect people in your family. And if you are not outraged, perhaps you don't understand the issue. But the bullying, the legalized bullying, goes beyond the state-created and state-sponsored agencies. I would also say, too, that the family law attorneys specialize in bullying, especially when unilateral divorce takes place. So the family law attorneys will tell you how much you need them to help guide you through the whole process of divorce. And about 75% of the so-called no-fault, what I'm going to call forced divorce instances, one spouse does not want the divorce. One parent does not want the divorce. And in more than 75% of the instances where children are involved, the children do not want the divorce. They want to see their parents learn how to love each other, keep the family intact. They want to be with both parents. However, the family law attorneys will tell you that in the state of Texas, you have the right to divorce your husband or your spouse for any reason or no reason whatsoever. And they will guide you through this very emotional and tumultuous process. And in fact, they know you're vulnerable, and they will, in many instances, financially exploit you at the same time. They will exploit not just you, but your ex-spouse, and they will destroy the lives of your children. You may have a college fund set up for your children. That is not off limits to the divorce attorneys when they look at how much they can bill. There was one individual that said in California there was an unwritten rule. They would not put this in writing, but the family law attorney said that you can basically bill up to 40% of what the couple has. So when you go in for a divorce, one of the things they want to do is say, how much do you have in assets? Now they're going to tell you, we want to make sure you get your fair share. Even if you're the adulterer, even if you're the drunkard who's beating your wife, you need to have your fair share. No, you are at fault for the divorce, but the attorneys and the law will say, you get to have 50% of everything. This is the way that it works. But the attorneys also have another dirty secret that they don't tell you. Often you have two attorneys that are friends with each other. One will represent the husband, one will represent the wife. And they can even get together for lunch and talk with each other about the best strategies, not to help the couple come together, but the best strategies to collect money from you. Because in their mind, what is the most important thing? The reconciliation of the families? No. Billable hours. How much they can take from you. So that is legalized bullying, not just of the individuals involved, but it's also victimizing the children. And it has no regard whatsoever to the rights of the respondent, who is going to be found guilty of what is called insupportability, which is not even defined anywhere, and the children who, for whatever reason, now become victims of this attorney and the laws in the state of Texas. And this actually is one area I would like the Attorney General to give an advisory opinion on, whether unilateral divorce is constitutional.